All right, grace and peace, everyone, and welcome to the Be Holy podcast. It's your host, Oski, and this is the podcast where we talk about Christian hip hop and everything connected to it. Oh, and of course, Jesus. So, this platform was created because there's a lot of Christian hip hop going on right now. There's a lot of topics to discuss, but the stories behind the artists, their journeys, their struggles, their faith are not being told. So, I'm here to pull the curtains and to tell the story behind the sound. So every episode and even every live, just like we're having right now, we're going to be having real conversations about faith, culture, and creativity. And to do a temperature check on Christian hip hop and to talk about some of the things that are happening. So we're not here to judge, we're here to celebrate and inspire. So we have a very special occasion, a very special topic and conversation today. I have my good friend Chris Akpala. He is also a believer. Been a believer for about the last 2 years, and he's also trying to get into Christian hip hop. And I felt as though this would have been a good segment for us to talk about. Okay, what is the state of Christian hip hop? And I wanted to treat this as a state of emergency because Chris, there's been a lot of things that's been happening. There's been a lot of controversies. There's been rap beefs. There's been topics about Christian artists jumping on with secular artists, and then there's been artists that being exposed and things of that nature. So there's so much that's going on, and I think as you're hearing all of this, you have a lot of questions. Am I correct?
Yeah,
So I want to invite. Right. So I want to invite any questions that you may have today as we go ahead and start this conversation. But Chris, tell a little bit about yourself, your background, and what got you into Christian hip hop.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell the audience, hey, audience, my name is Chris Akpala. I've been a Christian about 2-3 years. One of the main reasons I've got back into being a believer is because of people like his brother, watching them in the faith, watching what they do, is encouraged me to get into the space. And then just overall, just being a believer, giving the gospel. That's kind of the things that I've been doing, helping out with the church, helping out the church when it comes to podcasts, or showing my gift in the past couple of years. And like alluded to, it's like I'm trying to get into Christian hip hop, but there's certain questions that I have questions with. Like, for example, it's a lot of beef. There's a lot of beef in Christian hip hop. There's a lot of things going on with with different artists when it comes to saying certain statements. And to be honest with you, sometimes I think like a lot of people come into the space because as a Christian rappers, because they're not doing well in the secular world. And they think, okay, well, let me just put Jesus on something. Let me just put God on something. And it's like, okay, if I'm doing these topics, then okay, this is a Christian artist. And I'm like, okay, is this really Christian? There's very few Christian artists I can say that's Christian artists in mind, but I think there should be a change when it comes to Christian rap. And the main thing is just beef. Why people like, and I just wanted to kind of throw this question to you, do you think there should be beef in Christian rap? Because I found out this more recently, even from talking to people like you and Chris, there's beef. Like, why is there beef in Christian hip hop? And what and is that competition or what?
Well, I think for me, like when it comes to beef in Christian hip hop, and the common thing to say or the cliche thing to say is that people are getting into their flesh, right? You have believers that are getting into their flesh because something that's being said is being misconstrued by the other person or is being misinterpreted by the other person. There was an incident not too long ago between two rappers, and this is not the type of podcast, nor am I the type of person to drop names. I don't do name drops. A lot of y'all know what's been going on, especially if you're tapped into Christian hip hop. And also, if you're just now getting to Christian hip hop, I'm still not going to do that because I don't want you to look at these artists in a negative light, right? I still want to celebrate Christian artists and not to judge them in any type of way. And that's why my intro is the way that it is. But going back to your question, Chris, I think a lot of people are just in the flesh and they're not doing things biblically, right? Because even the Bible tells us if you have an alt with your brother, go address your brother one-on-one. And my pastor had a sermon where he was talking about how that can be done practically. Now, I believe in competition. I think there should be competition, right? But I think that competition shouldn't then be leaked into our music, right? We shouldn't be sending direct shots towards another artist because we may feel that we're better than the other artists. And these are things that secular artists do. So even for my audience, people are trying to get into Christian hip hop. When they hear these things, it automatically takes them back to the music that they're trying to get away from. So I don't agree that it should be there, right? I think a lot of fellas who are in Christian hip hop, and even the ladies, right? And I know we don't necessarily hear it from the ladies as often, but still, whenever we got two Christian artists going at each other, I think that to me shows a lack of immaturity because y'all obviously could have handled this conversation without making it public, or it's one of them things where you want to stir up controversy because, like we always heard, Chris, bad publicity is still publicity, so it don't even matter. And I think some people are more concerned about, okay, if I talk about this, and it's going to draw more attention to me, or it's going to draw more attention to the album that I'm about to drop. But I do think that there's room to be competitive because that may stir up, right, more music or better substance in music that you're trying to put out. Now, when I say competitive, I'm not saying that I'm only doing this because I want to show this other person that I'm better. But you may see an artist that you're inspired by. You may see an artist that people have possibly pinned y'all two together. And you may say, you know what? All right, I got to really tap in when it comes to my artistry. I got to really tap in when it comes to my music and develop something that, one, glorifies the Lord. And then two, is going to be something that's going to be received by my audience. And I think that's the one thing. If we're going to be competitive, do it for the sake of, I'm trying to put this music out and I'm trying to put the best music that I can possibly put out. And I'm doing it to glorify God and to help those draw closer to Christ.
No, and I get it, Oh, it's like for example, like when we go to Bible study, when we go to certain things, sermons and men's study groups, usually the deacons leading, people are leading that know the Bible. You have people too that's making sure they're fact checking what they're saying, which is keeping them sharp, which is keeping themselves sharp, and I understand that perspective, but it's like if it's supposed to be Christian rap, it's like y'all all gonna win at the end of the day because y'all all glorifying God. So it's just like, I don't know. For me, it's just like, I don't know if it's still biblical, but I do think you should address it. You should address it privately, and at some point you should address it publicly. But if you're just doing it for the money's sake or popularity's sake, then that's where I have an issue. That's my point of view on that.
Right. But another thing that causes a stopgap when it comes to this, where that momentum continues to keep going when there is a rap beat that's been ignited, is that some of these artists are not being properly discipled. And you can tell by their actions, right? And it's either they're choosing not to listen to the discipling of a pastor, of a mentor, of a deacon, of a minister, whoever, or it's one of them things where it's like, I don't need a pastor or a minister or a deacon or a mentor because it's just, it's me and God. I'm good. So therefore, it becomes a thing because of their success and their popularity. They start to go into that Kanye mode. And if you don't remember, like when Kanye was trying to, I guess, convert into or come through the back door into Christian hip hop or Christian music, it was a lot of reports that was being said that he had a lot of yes men and he wasn't really listening to some of the people that was trying to pour into him or mentor him. And you kind of see that there wasn't really any fruit out of what he did, right? And that's why it's always good. The Bible tells us to test every spirit, and that's why it's good that some of us waited to see if this was actually something of God or if it was going to get overthrown. So I feel your concern because when you see it and when you hearing it, and then you're also trying to line that with how we function and operate in the church. But so you got to think about, man, these artists, even though they're all connected to their own churches, there isn't one entity that's kind of okay, like let's keep everybody in line, right? Christian hip hop doesn't work that way. I mean, even on the secular side, you have labels and things of that nature, but a lot of artists, they are independent. So obviously they're going to move independently when it comes to their music, when it comes to their craft, and even how they conduct themselves when it comes to rap beef as well.
No, that's actually a good point. Oh, I appreciate you. And the main thing I took from that, what you're saying is there's no accountability. I feel like with Christian artists, right?
Yeah.
What happens is, like you're saying, they don't have accountability. They don't have a deacon. They don't have a pastor. They don't have these people in place. So since they don't have these people in place, they kind of like doing whatever. And then the thing I've been noticing lately, as a person, as a new believer, that's trying to understand the Christian atmosphere. I've been seeing them. They're at Rolling Loud, secular events, partnering with secular artists, and it's like, okay, so some people I talk to, they say, okay, they're collaborating, they're doing this with these seculars, getting more word out. But for me, it's like, okay, you're kind of saying that you can do whatever you want to do, and it's like it's no boundaries when it comes to Christian hip hop. I mean, what's your thought process on that, or if am I missing something on that?
I think that's a good thought process, right? Because I think when it comes to things that we don't fully understand, or it's not normal to us as Christians, right? Because again, we don't understand the life of a Christian artist, right? We understand the life of a Christian, but you don't understand the life of a Christian police officer. You don't understand the life of a Christian firefighter. You don't understand the life of a Christian lawyer, even though they are believers. And although they're still going to be followers of Christ, they're going to be disciples, right? The way in which they conduct themselves in all these different endeavors is going to be different. So when you're looking at a Christian artist and he's up there and rolling loud with all these other secular artists, and also on top of that, back in the day, this is me and Chris, back in the day when we wasn't, rock or living for the Lord, we was at these concerts, so we know, just like some of y'all may know, what actually goes on. But here's my thing. If I'm a secular artist, would I go to a Rolling Loud concert? No, I wouldn't, right? But do I knock a Christian artist for going to a concert like that to promote his music, to glorify God, to possibly sow a seed, to share the gospel through their music, hopefully, in hopes that somebody will draw close to Christ? For example, it's a female rap artist. I think her name is Kyla now. And if it's wrong, I hope somebody can correct me. But she talked about how Miles Millick, I think that's his name. I always get his name messed up. He got on the track, or he got on a song with a secular artist, and they said that somebody was actually drawn to Christ because of them always listening to the secular artist, but then they featured a Christian artist, and that's when they got their first taste of Christian music and what it kind of meant to be a believer. So it's one of those things where you never necessarily know who's in the audience, because even the Bible tells us, when one sinner repent, the angels are rejoicing. So it's like if somebody comes to Christ, or somebody says, you know what, I want to go to church. I know today is Rolling Loud and it's Saturday, but I want to go to church tomorrow because I heard Caleb Gordon, or because I heard No Big Deal, because I heard Keyshawn Boone. Then at the end of the day, we got to put our hands up and celebrate it, because that's all we really ask for. You know what I'm saying? So me personally, would I do it? No, but I don't knock the artists who do. Now, to your point, when it comes to boundaries, I do think there has to be certain boundaries put in place when you are in these type of settings, right? We understand that Jesus was sinners. That's Jesus. You know what I'm saying? And he had a mission, not to say that we don't have a mission, but Jesus was perfect, right? You know what I'm saying? He was not going to sin. And some of us, and we say this a lot, but some of us get into these certain situations and then we end up falling short. And it's look, at the end of the day, dust your feet off. The Bible says the man falls 7 times, righteous man falls 7 times, but gets back up. But at the same time, you have to know where you are in your walk, and if you can even be in these type of environments. If you can't, I'm saying to take a step back and let somebody else take up that slack.
Nah, I agree with you saying, because not everybody can be in those environments. It's a lot of things going on in those concerts: drugs, alcohol, women, men. So it's you got to be a tough cookie to even keep your head on straight in those environments. But the one thing I will agree with you on is evangelism. You know what I'm saying? I will say that I was with Reese, your brother, and I didn't even know that Christian rap could be quality.
And shout out to my brother. He got a podcast called the Gorilla Podcast. It's coming out real soon. But yeah, shout out to my little bro. Reese Gorilla Podcast. Shout out to you, brother.
Shit, shout out to Reed, shout out to Gorilla Podcast. Yeah, so even when I was like, with him, I went down there and I was like, dang, they got actual quality. I was listening to Pastor Mike Jr. He's one of my favorite Christian rappers. Even though you said a little something crazy about the billionaire, but I get where he was trying to come with. But yeah, I was saying I was introduced. It was just so much good quality with it, like in that, and then two, in a way, music touches you more. Like if somebody's listening to that at a secular concert, they're like, oh snap, I might want to get with Christ, or I might go to church the next day, or they might just leave because they just heard the word. Because like even with Pastor Pope, he had the funeral, he had the funerals in odd places giving Christ. You never know. And shout out to Minister 2. I did a podcast with him a while ago, and even he that's one of the reasons he came to Christ, because he was introduced to it at a funeral. So I, in general, I do think, from what you're saying, it does make a lot of more better sense to me. And yeah, it's tracking, But I do want to ask too, like with all of that, the quality of Christian rap. A lot of people, even with myself, I always thought you have to have this like kind of like cheesy situation where it's like, okay, you just like 1 with the 2 with the 3 and the 4, But I've noticed that the quality is good. Can you kind of talk about how the quality has progressed? And also, too, can you name some artists that are more in the more modern age? Because I don't even know any of those artists. Like, can you break that down to me?
You said more like Chris, like some of the artists today that are more modern. Yeah, there's a lot. Like I mentioned, some like there's Caleb Gordon, there's Keyshawn Boone, with some other artists that I can think of. No Big Deal. He's a pretty dope artist. Young C is one of my favorite artists that I listen to. Trying to think of any others. I'm trying to think of some other artists that I personally really listen to. I said Young C, No Big Deal. You also got Wanda. She's a female Christian artist. She's really dope as well. Portia Love, Toya Love. Yeah, they're pretty good. I mean, because you got a mixed variety. So they're more the modern artists that you have. It's like compared to. So when I first started listening to Christian hip hop, and some of the artists that I was listening to were like the Flames, the Truth, the Ambassador, Andy Mineos, the Lecrae's. Like these are some, and shout out to them. And there's some of like the early, not early, but some of the, I guess, pioneers to what Christian hip hop is today. But mind you, there's not a podcast, there's a documentary called Mic Drop, The Culture of Christian Hip Hop. And Christian hip hop's been out since the early 80s.
Damn,
and it's crazy. And it was it's kind of one of those genres where it's a subgenre, obviously, but it was really underground, right? So you had these believers, who got saved in the 80s, right? And it's funny because we had fans of hip hop today, and somebody may say, you know what, I've been a fan of hip hop, I got saved, but I want to listen to Christian hip hop, or I want to get into Christian hip hop myself. And we forget that these things were also happening in the 80s, where you got certain artists or certain people who were listening to secular rap, right, in the 80s, late 80s, 90s, right? But they got saved and say, you know what, I want to start listening to Christian artists, or I want to get into Christian hip hop myself. Now, the quality was always there. The substance was there. The content was good, right? Because obviously that was a time in which, rap was more about the lyricists, right? It was more about the double, triple entendres and stuff like that. So that's what you was expecting. That was the standard of rap back then. And you got that not only on the Christian side, but also on the secular side. It was actually one person, I can't remember the name, but there was a store called the Bereans, right? And you know about the Bereans, and Acts, it was very studious when it comes to the word. And he talked about it as an artist where, he used to get all these different books because he wanted to understand or amplify his own theology when it came to his rap. So he wanted to improve the quality of his rap by studying the word. And I think every artist, whether you out here and you kind of keeping up with the trends, and we're going to talk about the keeping up with the trends and some of the modern music, you should always be staying in your word and getting a new revelation from God in regards to, what you can be putting into your rhymes. Now, today, the modern music that we have is, to me, it's fire. I think it's keeping up with some of the secular music that we have. But I just think that when you got artists who are talking about the Lord, but are also, telling their testimony, sharing their struggles and things of that nature, but they're not just sharing their struggles and talk about their issues, they're also providing a resolution to what they're going through, which is Christ, which is the finished work of the cross. So the music today, the modern music today, and I've heard this from somebody, they said it's real kids Bobby. And I thought that was funny because they felt like Christian music sounds like kids bop music, right? But you also got to understand Christian music, just like secular music, is also being a victim. I don't want to say a victim, but it's aligning itself with social media, right? So you got TikTok, you got a lot of TikTok type of rap songs. You know what I'm saying? You'll hear it and it'll be trendy probably for like a few weeks, and then there's another song that you'll get on. But some artists are only producing that type of music because they know that it draws attention. So is that a problem? Because they know that this is going to draw people to their music. My whole thing is whether it sounds kids boppy or it sounds like you've been studying the word front to back, like you read the Bible front to back 3 times already this year, and you talk about everything theological that can be in your rhymes. As long as somebody's being drawn to Christ to your music, I really don't think it matters, in my opinion. But I do enjoy the artists who do provide a little bit more substance in their music.
Now I agree. Like even with me listening to the music now, it's hard for me to listen to certain. I like the older Christian artists because like I feel the passion. I feel like they love Christ. But a lot of the ones that's hitting right now, it's like you said, kids boppy. I think most Christian rappers are trying to cater to secular by making it like what do they call it? Like they're just trying to make it replay value. Like they just want to hit that little tone, like and then get people in to make sales. I mean, that's just what my thoughts is when it comes to that. It's just like it's more of like just replay and just selling. Actually, there's a couple artists that said that they're trying to follow the secular because that's what works. Complication makes it people not want to really get with Christ, and that's the issue.
Yeah. But you know what? Even with that though, Chris, like I can understand that, right? It all depends on what your style, what your flavor is. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody may come to you and be like, man, I like, for example, I took, one of the young people in my church and my little cousin out to eat. And, the lady asked, what type of ice cream does she want? And, Justin, one of the kids that came with me, he asked for vanilla. And my little cousin asked for chocolate. And they looked at each other like, why would you get chocolate? And he looked at him like, why would you get vanilla? But that's their flavor. And I don't even eat ice cream. So I'm just sitting there as a spectator. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is, it just depends on what your style, what your flavor is. Some artists are a little bit more complex with their rhymes, and I think that's cool. Jackie Hill Perry is one of those people she's kind of like a Wale where it's very poetic, and I think it's fire. That's not, I'm gonna be honest, that's not my taste. I'm not gonna hold you, but am I going to negate the fact that she's fire as an artist? But she just ain't my type of flavor. You know what I'm saying? But to a lot of other people, she is. I do like the Caleb Gordons. I like the Keyshawn Boones because they remind me of some artists that I used to listen to, before I really started getting into Christian hip hop. So it just depends, man. Like different strokes for different folks.
Do you feel like there's a pressure to be mainstream? It's kind of what I'm alluding to. Is like do you think that's the focus with most Christian artists, or do you think they're actually trying to give the word from what you're listening to?
Man, that's a good question. Is there pressure to be mainstream?
Yeah, because that's what I think. I think there's a low key pressure.
I don't know if there's so much of a pressure to be mainstream, Chris. I just think that's just the beast that you're dealing with, right? Because you can be an artist and say, I'm only going to create music that I enjoy and I listen to, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna be real, man. If you got a family, you got kids, you want to grow in your craft, you may have to kind of think a little bit further or think outside the box as to, okay, what music can I put out that people may actually want to listen to? You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, curate the music that you believe God has put on your heart to create, and that's cool. I just think it's the intent of the artist, right? Now, if it's a thing where you only want to be mainstream, but you're not trying to be mainstream to give glory to God, because I do feel as though it doesn't have to be one or the other, right? You can grow as an artist and grow your platform and be one of the top Christian artists, but you say, you know what? I want to get to this point because I really want to pour into the youth, or I really want to pour into some of the people that grew up in the area that I'm from, right? I want the whole world to see that I truly love Jesus, and I want you to hear that through my music. Because the larger you become, the more widespread your influence starts to get. So some artists may think that way, but then I'm not gonna lie though, Chris. I think there are artists who are only thinking about being mainstream, and as they continue to get to the top of that mountain, they leave God at the bottom, and that's not, you know what I'm saying. That's not the route that you want to take. So
And it gets to the point where I'm trying to get at too as a believer. It's like sometimes it's like I get that. Like we got artists like Kenny. Shout out to Kenny. He's a good artist. He created his own fan base. I don't
shout
think
out to
he's
K
trying to.
Nice.
I don't think he's trying to. Oh, K Nice. Shout out to K Nice. I don't think he's trying to go mainstream. I'm not sure. I think he's just trying to create music that can glorify God. A couple of the people you brought on this podcast, they're trying to create music that can glorify God. But it's like, are you creating more fans? Are you creating followers of Christ? That's kind of where I'm going at right now. It's like, or what are we doing? You know? So it's like, what's your
Man,
thoughts on that?
that's so good, man. And I think, you know, the waters, you can really muddy up the waters, man, when you forget why you're doing what you're doing, bro. You know what I'm saying? Because and I always mention this a lot, and I always want people to understand, like, and me and Chris are from the DMV. Chris is from DC. I'm from Prince George's County. And one of the staples here when it comes to a genre of music is go-go, right? And go-go is a homegrown type of sound, right? It's a homegrown type of genre of music. And you have to be really tapped into here to really understand it. And I had the opportunity to be part of a Christian go-go band, and being on stage and being in front of people, hundreds of people, different type of churches. And sometimes you do get lost when it comes to what your mission is, because people do start to become fans of you, right? And you forget that once you get off the stage, people now get access to who you really are. Because some people, and I'll be honest, to be transparent, I wasn't all the way living right when I was in my band. There was a lot of things that I shouldn't have done as somebody who is speaking loudly and proudly about what I do as a believer through my music. But then behind closed doors, I wasn't doing what's right. You know what I'm saying? So that happens though when you are not renewing your mind. And we talk, and the Bible talks about this. And when the Bible says these things, it's not just something to just recite or reiterate, you know what I mean? Like for Sunday school, right? You know, like these are things that we really need to meditate on and to ask the Lord, you know, have I really renewed my mind when it comes to this ministry? Because Christian hip hop is a ministry. When I was in a Christian go-go band or gospel go-go band, that was a ministry. So it happens where people do, and shout out to Kenny, because I interviewed Kenny not too long ago, and he has a family, he has a daughter. Shout out to him, man. He's an amazing man of God. And for him, it ain't really about fans, right? It's really about drawing people to Christ. And Nick, you know, who's also somebody that I interviewed that's close to Kenny, he said the same thing. And it was something he said that really hit me. He said, you know, before he performs, he has to really lock in with the Lord. And sometimes spending that intimate time with the Lord reminds you that I'm not here to create fans of me. I'm here to create followers of Christ. So my question would be, you know, what is that artist prayer life like? what is his alone time like? When he's away from everybody else, how much time is he spending with the Lord? Because that would tell you where his mindset is in regards to, am I just trying to make fans of me, or am I trying to create followers of Christ?
Now, and I get where you're coming from. Like for me, like a lot of people don't know me in the tech space. I do a lot of same things. I'm not an artist. I can't sing. I can barely do the two-step. So I don't know what's going on with that. But I try my best. Oh no,
you better do the two-step at your wedding. You better do the two-step at your wedding.
Oh, this hot dance out here. I'm trying to kind of African dead out here.
Nah. We gonna have to pay for them lessons, bro.
But yeah, in that space, like same thing. I'm a believer. I have to make sure I'm following the values. But sometimes every now and then, like in that space, you'd be like, okay, well, it's me, you know. But shout out to Deacon Reno. Like you gotta understand that's the mission that God sent you. My mission is to highlight tech people. My mission is to help those people, you know. And again, when I was doing it, I wasn't even getting paid. And shout out to K Nice, you know, that's what I think. That's what I truly believe what Christian hip hop is, because they stick to what they believe. They keep it going. He's not caring about the celebrity of it. Again, you know, it's a God-given gift. But what I will say is, like, what I'm noticing in Christian hip hop, and there's nothing wrong with that, for getting praised for what you do, or getting, you know, like, you know, shout outs on the craft if you did. And shout out to people like Jackie Hill Perry and things like that. I do believe that they're trying to actually help people, you know, get into be believers in things. But then even with them, like I can tell with them, they're not trying to accept the celebrity of it. Like people try to put that on them. And that's why I will agree on that. People try to put that on them and they want them to act like that, but they're not going to do that. You know, and I see that from watching afar.
Yeah. Hey, that's so true though. And people do try. You got to understand, right? You know, the whole world is watching what believers do, right? Even when you look at the Pharisees, right, and the Sadducees, they was always trying to catch Jesus slipping, but he was always 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. He already knew the heart of man, right? That's why he was never able to fall for some of the tricks that they was trying to do, some of the questions that they were trying to trip him up on, because he just knew how man was. But I respect so much the Jackie Hill Perry's, and I say this because I remember seeing a video and she had a performance, and one of her songs, I would say, can cause a woman to dance in a very exotic way. You know what I'm saying? They can do things with certain anatomies of their body that they should not be doing listening to this type of song. So she made it very clear that, hey, we don't do that in here. Right? This is a Christian concert. I'm promoting Christian music. And I respected that so much, because somebody else who is not, you know, filled with the Spirit at that time, who's not conscious of who they are and where they are in that moment, they would have said like, yo, like, hey, we don't do this, right? They probably would have had allowed it, because they just want to keep the show going. They don't care. And I respect it, because that lets me know that you're just not going to accept anything. That also lets me know that there could probably be deals on the table, but if God is not telling you to accept that deal, you may be like, nah, I'm good. There's probably a lot of money that's being floated around, but a person like Jackie Hill Perry would be like, nah, I don't want to accept that, just because of what comes with that money and who the money is coming from. So that's why, man, you got to really, you know, walk in the Spirit and be in step with the Spirit, because it will show you, you know, what you should be doing and what you should not be doing. And so, you know what I'm saying, you don't get caught up in that stuff. But shout out to Jackie Hill Perry, man, because she definitely stood 10 toes down when she did that.
Yeah, because all money ain't good money. And I respect people like that. But outside of Jackie Hill Perry's, and I think Lecrae's coming back and other people, there's sometimes people think their personalities outshines the gospel. Sometimes, like with these artists, they think they are the gospel, you know, in a way. So, I mean, how do you stay clear from that? And when you're listening to these artists, shouldn't you be like reading for yourself to make sure that you know what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening? So, what's your thoughts on that, Ho? If that makes sense?
Yeah, No, I definitely see what you're saying because I think certain artists do present themselves in a certain way. It's like this, right? And I don't want to get too long-winded, but I remember my brother. Shout out to my man Reese, my little bro. He got the Gorilla Podcast. Make sure y'all look out for that.
Not the
But I
Reese.
remember he was telling me about a lady that I forgot what church this was, man. But I ain't gonna name the church. But she was at this church and she basically looked at the crowd and she said, "Yeah, I ain't never sinned in my life." She told the whole audience that the whole congregation she ain't never sinned in her life, and y'all shouldn't be smoking, y'all shouldn't be drinking, y'all shouldn't be fornicating, y'all should be having sex and doing all of these things. You shouldn't be going to the club and all of that stuff. And I'm like, dang. In my mind, I ain't gonna hold up. I'm like, dang, Shorty, like how you gonna tell a whole bunch of people who probably are struggling in their sin, or what I'm saying, they have failed a couple of times that you ain't never sinned? That's almost like saying that you God, right? And I'm not saying that artists have done this, but I think artists can present themselves in a way or not necessarily communicate their struggles, because sometimes when you don't communicate these things, you're not sharing your testimony in your music, but it's just more so, like I said, it's just real vibey, real kids boppy, and there's really no substance to it. Then somebody can take it as that and look at you like, dang, this person can do no wrong. But that's because that's how you presented yourself. You know what I'm saying? So that it is very imperative, man, that people who are listening, like somebody like you who's getting into Christian hip hop, and my audience, shout out to my viewers. If you're listening to Christian hip hop, man, and that's why I'm having these interviews, because I want y'all to get to know who these artists are behind the music. That's why I say I want to tell the stories behind the sound. I want to pull back the curtains. I want to show y'all, like these are real men and women of God who are solid. And they're not perfect. By means, nobody is perfect. Because if he were, they would have been a man who died on the cross, who's 100% man, 100% God, and rose up in 3 days for the forgiveness of our sins, because he was not perfect and he was the only one that was perfect, right? So I think we also got to go back to the basics and realize, okay, as I'm listening to certain artists, I got to make sure that you're just not telling me what to do, but you're also in your music communicating to me, hey, this is something I struggle with too. This is something that I go through too. And that's why one of the artists that I started to listen to was Young C. And it's not to knock any other artists. I'm not saying no other artists were doing this, but he was the only artist that I felt though at the time, back in 2022, where he was just real about what he was struggling with. But at the end of it, he always pointed back to Christ. So shout out to Young C, man, because he was one of the ones that really, really was helping me to pull out of listening to secular music and even secular go-go and just listen to Christian rap solely. And if he was really the only artist that I was listening to at the time, but he was kind of the catalyst that helped me listen to so many different artists that I did not know were just like him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, nah, shout out to O with that response. Like even with that Christian, even if I was a newer believer, and then this lady comes up there and says I haven't committed a sin my whole life, I'm like, man, I'm like everything's a sin. There's so many laws. I think you kind of educated me on that. Oh, there's so many things. I don't believe that. You telling me you ain't did not one sin? Nah, man. But that's when it comes to your word and things like that, and that can distraught people because they end up thinking they gods at that music. Music is a powerful tool, man. But shout out to the artists that are actually using it the right way versus the ones that's not. And I did want to kind of get a question off on you, like, because I know you've been in the space longer. It's like, so for me, it's like I'm starting to listen to more Christian artists. Some artists I can tell that they're creating this music about God, right? But there's some artists where I can hear they can say, okay, well, as long as I just put it in there, like God, they can make a whole rap song. They can make a whole Christian rap song where they're talking about, they can even mention like it can be darn near as close as a secular song. Like for example, like it can use a Drake beat. It can sound almost as if they about to go shoot up somebody, and they just put God in there one time. do you think they're still making Christian rap, man? Like is Christian rap, or is it a facade? Like that's where I want to go at too. And from you listening to music, do you think that is the case, or do you think it's actually glorifying God? Are they actually making Christian rap for Christian artists or Christian people? I know it's long.
I'm gonna say this, right? Because I do think there's a difference between someone who is rapping as a Christian and an actual Christian rapper. You know what I'm saying? Or a Christian that raps, as opposed to someone who is rapping as a Christian. You know, I think that's what I'm trying to say. Because sometimes you can have somebody who is just rapping as a Christian, but they're not necessarily a Christian themselves. So, like you said in this song, they can sprinkle God here and there, and it can sound real good. You know what I'm saying? It can sound like it's the real thing, but it's kind of like, you ever seen those videos where like it looked like it's a steak, but when you cut into it, it's actually a cake. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes they'll have it where like you have to be able to tell the difference. And sometimes, like to the naked eye, to some of us, like I don't bake cakes. You know what I'm saying? So like I leave that to other people to do that. So I can't necessarily tell that, oh, that might actually be a cake. You know what I mean? But to somebody who's rapping, who's not a Christian, right? But they're rapping as a Christian, and like you said, they're just, dropping God here and there, and they made, and the song just made me vibey. So, like I was saying earlier, you can just have a real vibey, nice little beat, and some people ain't even listening. Some people ain't even listening to the words of the song. You see what I'm saying? So it becomes a thing of, all right, so I'm just listening to the beat. I drop God here and there. And you got to keep in mind too, Chris, some artists don't find success on the secular side. So they then come through the back door to the Christian side, Christian hip hop side, and they just learn the game. Like, oh, I just got to do this. Hey, God, okay. You know what I'm saying? I just got to talk like this when I'm on IG or TikTok. Okay, all right, bet. And they just, you know what I'm saying? It's like wolves in sheep's clothing. You know what I'm saying? But you got to test every spirit. You got to vet every artist that you're listening to. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to I'm just going to take every type of quote unquote Christian sounding music and accept it as that's what it is. But you have to have that deciphering ear to know the difference. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. I got some more questions for you. I'm just gonna keep them coming, man. So as a believer, new believer, and also too, so I'm on social media, right? And I'm seeing the market. I'm a marketer myself. I know how to market. And again, a lot of marketing is driven through. You got to hit certain things. Sometimes it could be controversy. For myself, I don't do controversy. I don't put no other people down. I've noticed some Christian artists putting people down. Yeah. Or another marketing tool I've seen people use now, it's like, okay, well, they'll make a video and they say, well, if you're a Christian, you better like this. Or if you're a Christian, you better download this. Or if you're a Christian, you're not serving God by not downloading my thing. So you're kind of using God in a way to force you to get to their to buy their stuff. Or like I've seen this too, it's like they'll go talk about somebody else or a secular artist, and then they'll put their music there. Like that's kind of a little iffy to me. Like, how you gonna talk about this person, which is not what we're supposed to be doing anyway? You know what I'm saying? And then you're gonna put your stuff in there to get sales for your own music. I mean, you might as well just promote your own music in the beginning. So, have you seen these type of things, bro? And what do you think about this type of marketing from what I've been seeing?
Yeah, that's tough, man. Because man, some people got this mindset that I got to get it off the muscle. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got to bulldoze my way. I'm gonna bulldoze my way to put myself out there, and I think it kind of brings us back to the question that you had earlier about wanting to be mainstream. I think if you want to be mainstream, that's the type of marketing tactic that you're going to take. I'm a bash this secular, and I'm gonna be real with you, right? Shout out to all the apologists and all of that. People who are in the apologetics. Like I think there's room and space for that in the kingdom of God, right? And we need people like that who are going to debate with people who are against the kingdom of God, who are against the gospel, to teach them about the truth of the gospel. And shout out to them, right? There are some that I truly and highly respect, and there are others that I'd be like, bruh, you just want to get into an argument with this person. And then I'm looking at your content. I'm like, it's kind of like the old saying, this is not biblical, but I remember my mother always saying, when you see two people arguing, you can't tell who's the fool, right? She used to say something to that extent. So I'm always, and I'm saying that to say, like, when it comes to marketing and your marketing tactics and your branding strategies and stuff like that, I'm not saying that you can't use certain things as a template or a reference, right? Because obviously you want to grow your platform and you want to grow as an artist. But at the same time, man, like, we cannot be doing things that forces people to look at us and say, I can't tell if you're a Christian or if you're in the world. You know what I'm saying? Because again, we're always under the microscope. So people in the world, when they see us doing things that they would do, then what does that do? That leaves a bad taste in their mouth about who Jesus is. We got all these people who say that they're Christian, but they're not exemplifying the behaviors of a believer. So I do think, man, sometimes you got to take the narrow road, and it's hard. But if you really care about, winning souls for Christ, you care about sharing the gospel, you care about being a disciple, then you sometimes got to take the harder route. So trying to bulldoze your way, trying to berate other people and talk down on other people so you can build your platform up, you can build your career up, build your stream, get more streams. It's like, nah, that's not the route, man. You gotta really, what I'm saying, don't try to get it off the muscle, man. Get it off the humble and just say, I'm just going to stick to the scriptures. I'm going to pray and I'm going to trust the Lord, and I'm going to give the results to him.
Yeah, that's what with me, like, that's why even with me, I don't say like I couldn't be a Christian artist. It's like, because I know I'm already watched and I can't really make no mistakes. So it's like you're darn near in a predicament, right? You know what I'm saying? Oh, because even like churches now, some churches don't even support Christian artists, even though it's a good thing. So it's like, if they're saying it's not a good thing, then what's going on? Like if they're not supporting it, is it a bad thing? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think some churches is stuck in they stuck in like the 80s, man. And sometimes I'm just being real. Some churches have not chosen to keep up with the times. They have not embraced alternative music outside of gospel music. You know what I'm saying? Like gospel contemporary type of music. They're still very confined to that. So sometimes you may not get support of the church, not because of the type of music that you putting out, that they may not necessarily agree with it. I just think not too many churches are really so keen on attaching themselves to possible controversy, because you got to look at it like this: Christian hip hop period is filled with controversy. So they're thinking that, okay, just because it's Christian hip hop don't mean that it's going to stray away from controversy. And unfortunately, some of that is kind of true. I'm not going to hold you. You know what I'm saying? Like, Christian hip hop got controversy just like regular hip hop got controversy. But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? Like, we got to be able to remove the log out of our eye. Like, churches ain't even perfect. You know what I'm saying? We don't all do things the way the Bible wants us to do. We all fall short. We all make mistakes. And I think if any church see an artist that's coming out of their church and they're trying to do Christian hip hop, you know what I'm saying? They're trying to become a singer, a Christian R&B singer. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think a church should be able to support. And the reason that they don't support is it's just not necessarily it's not part of their budget plans, or it's just one of the things like they don't want to attach themselves to it, because then it becomes, how the headlines be, oh, such and such who attend such and such church was caught up in this, you know what I'm saying? Like they not trying to see their names pop up on the headlines, man, because you know how that goes. That's why football players get cut. They don't get cut up because of what they did. It's because the team name gets attached to it, and it's like they don't want that as as their reputation, and you know how that goes. So
Nah, I understand, but I do think churches should support Christian hip hop and just artists in period, like more because what I'm seeing is like a lot of those artists are not being cultivated in the church, or they get used and abused in the church. Like for example, like maybe somebody's a singer, but they want them to perform at every event they have for free with it, and they're making money off of them. Or somebody can be a producer. Somebody's a producer, and then you're making money, but that person's not making money. Or somebody's a person that a pianist, or it just I could keep going on scenarios. But I think that can lead somebody to being secular too because they can't actually use their gift in a way, And if you can't use your gift, what I'm gonna do? Hey, I can go perform for Beyonce, and they actually gonna pay me. They actually gonna use my gift, so I'm gonna go perform for Beyonce, and you really can't get mad at them because they got to pay their rent. So
I ain't gonna hold you, man. Everything that you just said, man, that is the Whitney Houstons, the Beyoncés, the Bobby Browns. I mean, most of them they started in the church, bro. And again, I don't know the full story, right? Some of them probably actually did just want to lead a church and become a megastar, and they actually did become megastars. But I do agree that happens a lot, right? People get used and abused in the church, and some people want to make this a career. And the church, I strongly believe the church got to support, bro. Like it can't be if you know that the Bible says your gifts will make room for you and put you before great men. And this particular person said, you know what? I don't think y'all as a church is supporting my gifts. I'm gonna get with this label or I'm gonna get with this manager, and they said that they're gonna help me, actually nurture and mature my gifts where I can get to a point and become who I believe God is calling me to be. A church can't get mad at that. You know what I'm saying? But some churches, I feel as though it's kind of like, all right, that's cool, but we ain't even going to support you after that. That's where I'm like, that ain't, you know what I'm saying? You got to do that man a solid. And no matter where he goes in his career, you still got to support that man any way that you can. Even if he can't do it at your church, because that's not necessarily something that y'all subscribe to, still, why not help his career become what he believed God intends for it to become?
I agree. Oh, that's a good topic. That's another topic in its own, man. Yeah, that's a whole different topic. And I get, even people get on me about that topic. But I think I'm getting towards the end of my questions on you, but I just want to ask this one final question. Like, can you explain what's going to happen in Christian hip hop for the next 5 years? And then can you kind of touch on like what is restoration? What is the purpose of Christian hip hop and how it should be done to glorify God? If you can.
So I think my forecast for Christian hip hop, I think you're going to see a lot of AI generated songs. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And that may actually bump a lot of producers out of play. And that's unfortunate, right? But at the same time, if we're able to produce and put out music at a more rapid rate, I don't even see a problem with it because, what I'm saying, to pay an artist as opposed to go pay a producer, engineer, a studio, as opposed to paying this software that's cheaper than all of that, a lot of people gonna go that route. So I do think you're gonna get more AI generated songs. I think, man, when it comes to the culture of Christian hip hop, CHH, I think you're going to see a lot more controversy, unfortunately. You're going to see a lot of people beef, and you're going to see a lot of people repent. You're going to see a lot of people get back together, and reconcile. You're going to see a lot of those things continue to happen. But also at the same time, I think Christian hip hop, in my humble opinion, will surpass secular rap when it comes to substance. right? When it comes to quality, when it comes to the ability to impact. I don't think a lot of music on the secular side is leaving an impact on anybody, right? You hear these songs, and obviously, a lot of these songs, to the secular, to the people who enjoy it, they like it, but then it's like, man, what is this song even promoting? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is it promoting? What is it causing you to think about? And I think even though we have artists that aren't necessarily complex with their rhymes, you do have a lot of Christian hip hop that just has more substance. Because a lot of people, Chris, are hurt, man. They're dealing with stuff. They want to get to know Christ, but the enemy does have a strong pull on this world. And I think we
Yeah.
forget that they say in the word Ephesians 2, he's a prince of this world, right? So he does have he has the world on a string. So Christian hip hop can help and really shine a light where people are now going to be drawn over to that side because everybody is always going to be looking for a solution. We listen to music because it helps calm us, right? We listen to music because it's therapeutic. We listen to music because it makes us feel good. Now imagine Christian hip hop does all those things, but it also points you to a savior. It also points to restoration, also points to redemption, also points to you being born again. And these are some of the things that people are looking for because they are tired. A lot of people are just getting tired of the way the world is. And I think Christian hip hop is growing to a point where it's really going to take more control when it comes to the hip hop space, right? But the only thing with that, right? Too much is given, much is required. So even though I believe Christian hip hop is going to grow to this point, I do believe that it's going to create more controversy as well. So unfortunately, those are some of the things that I believe is going to happen. There was another question that you had at the end, right?
Yeah, and then the last one is like restoration. Like, how can, even though we have all these issues with Christian rap hop, how can a artist still do what they're supposed to do with restoration and making sure that people are being led to Christ so that we can live on a positive note? I know I've been hitting you with all this stuff today, about this and this and that, but at the end of the day, like, what do you
No,
think?
man, honestly, right. So let me say this, man. There was a incident that happened where a certain artist was exposed for something that they did. It was with another person while married. It was pretty bad, right? And I respected how that was handled because even though we didn't necessarily want to see something like that become public, at the end of the day, that other person said I had to do this because I already did the Matthew 18 route, right? Like I addressed it one-on-one. I had a couple witnesses. They ain't want to listen. So now I got to bring it to the public. You know what I'm saying? Now, the only thing I say with that, don't bring it to the public to then shame and berate and to continue to cast stones on this individual. Bring it to the public because you want to see this person be restored. You know what I'm saying? So it's really about the language and what you use. And I believe this person did a great job doing that. My thing is Christian artists are still believers at the end of the day. And I know they're held to a higher standard because they are Christian artists. I think sometimes we put Christian artists on the same level as a minister or a pastor. Now I do understand that they got a lot of people that they're influencing through their music, but they are bound to fall just like any of us. And the Bible tells us there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So my thing is, if this person is truly able to repent, you know what I'm saying, and turn back to the Lord, take some time to sit down, spend time with the Lord, spend time in His Word as you have been communicating all throughout this live. I think we have to be able to embrace that person with open arms and encourage them and help his streams go back up, especially if he, what I'm saying, he repented, he spent time with the Lord, he understood where he went wrong, then we have to support that brother and restore him in gentleness. Those are the things that I believe Christian hip hop needs to be displaying when it comes to the culture. Like the secular side don't do that. You know, you got things like the Shade Room that is meant to tear people down, to tear celebrities down. Now they should come over to this side and say, okay, man, I see that they kind of talked about this dude because it's something that they did wrong, but I see that they only did it to hold him accountable. Then let's just say 6 months later, he comes out, he said, hey man, thank y'all for everybody supporting me, that love me, who encouraged me. You know, I've been restored and I'm ready to make music again, and I'm about to drop this album. And then all the same people or the same person that may have, you know, exposed him or whatever should also be the same person to celebrate him, a brother who is repentant from something that he did, who's been restored, and he's now trying to glorify God not only through his own personal life, but through his personal, through his music as well. I believe Christian hip hop will show more of that going forward. And if we see more of that going forward, a lot of people on the unbeliever side are going to come over this side and say, you know what, I want more of that, because if that's what true believers can do, you know what I'm saying, if that's how they can reconcile, that's how they can bounce back from something, then I need to get to know who Jesus is for real.
Okay, and that's why you're doing what you're doing with the Be Holy podcast. You know, just keep doing that, and eventually, people will see Christian hip hop in a different light. And again, nobody really touches this topic, so that's all my questions. I'm gonna leave it to you.
Man, Chris, man, I really thank you for joining. Hey, Chris, where can everybody, follow you? And also, I want to say this: Chris Akpala is one of the big tech influencers in the DMV. My brother just moved out to New Mexico, so what he started in the DMV, he's about to take that to New Mexico. But when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to tech, he has a podcast called The Tech Woke, and it's one of the biggest podcasts in the DMV, and it's about to be one of the biggest podcasts in New Mexico. So, Chris, where can people follow you when it comes to your platform?
So, for the most definitely, if people want to follow me, just follow Tech Woke Podcast. It's on all platforms. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, Christopher Akpala, Instagram, Christopher Akpala. And then, like I said, on all platforms, Tech Woke Podcast, or Tech Woke. So thank you, O, for coming on this pod, for allowing me to interview you, ask questions for me to better understand. And it was an honor being on your podcast, you know, to kind of see what you're doing and see how you're growing. And I think that keep doing what you're doing, and I can't wait to see how it grows in the future.
Thank you, man. And I also want to thank everybody that was able to join this live stream. Remember, this is the Be Holy podcast, where we're talking about Christian hip hop and the Christian hip hop artists and everybody in the industry. We want to take faith, culture, and creativity. Also, remember, man, I have a Patreon. It's called Holy Grounds. You can join as a member of my Patreon. You can get early access to some of our episodes. You can get the behind the scenes action. And we're also probably going to be having Bible studies as well. So you can't get enough of Bible studies. So you're going to get an exclusive member. If you want to be an exclusive member, make sure to follow my Patreon at Holy Grounds. The link is in the description. And also, we have a digital gift. If you want to get into Christian hip hop, if you want to become a Christian artist yourself, I have a digital gift. It's the 5 steps on how to become a Christian rapper. And also remember, lastly, man, the word says in 1 Peter 1:15 that he who calls you is holy, so you also be holy in all your conduct. So always say, be holy, live holy, and keep it holy. This is the Be Holy podcast, and we are out.